Am I audible, Bertha? Good evening to all of you. Welcome you to the Invest in Our Planet April webinar series 2023, day 1. So hope every one of you are so excited. So before starting, I'd like to note you all that we have started recording this session, and so this will be shared in our YouTube channel. And I also like to remind all the participants who are joining today to rename yourselves with your name and the country, and keep yourself muted throughout the session. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them or put it into the chat. Okay, so let's start today's session with the opening prayer. So I will invite Raka to do the opening prayer for us.
Thank you, Rasanjala. Let's start our day with a prayer. Let us bow our heads and put ourselves in the presence of Lord. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering all of us today. May you bestow your guidance and blessings so that we can enjoy and appreciate its significance in our lives. Bless everyone who are present here today, that each one of us may be able to share our knowledge, understanding, and wisdom for your glory and honor. May the various activities related to this event be a success through your intervention. We all ask of this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Raka. Now, I'd like to invite Jyoti Payar to do the welcome speech on behalf of IMCS Asia Pacific. Jyoti, over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Distinguished facilitator, respected animators, seniors, and my dear friends, namaste and good evening. Today we are gathered here to discuss a very important topic, that is Indigenous people, human, planetary and territorial health and climate change, a right-based approach. Before moving forward, I would like to share something about today's session. From 17 to 28 April 2023, the 22nd session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues will take place at the United Nations headquarters. So its main aim is also to seek to promote indigenous art and native languages, conflict prevention, and peace building through traditional institutions, and the strengthening of economic empowerment and traditional livelihoods of indigenous communities. So on behalf of IMCS Pax Romana Asia Pacific, it is my great pleasure to welcome our speaker to this forum. Lastly, let's join hands together and contribute to protecting indigenous people rights. I once again welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. So without further taking time, let me introduce our first speaker for today's session. We have Ms. Clare Westwood joining with us today. So she's the Regional Director and EPSCOL for the Creation Justice of Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei, and she's the co-chair of Laudato Si Action Platform. So welcome you, madam.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And thank you to IMCS Asia Pacific for inviting me to speak today to you on climate change and the impact on human health. I'll just share screen. I hope I can share. Yeah, okay. Just give me a second. To slide. Can you see?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, okay. And just to save bandwidth, I think I will switch off my video. Yeah. Okay. So the topic given to me is climate change risks to human health. And today what we'll cover is what is health and the right to health, seeing the impacts of climate change through the lens of holistic health, and how can we ensure health for everyone. So first, I'd like to start with the definition of holistic health and what is health. And there are 6 aspects of holistic health: physical health, environmental health, spiritual health, social health, emotional health, and mental health. And I like to quote John here: "I've come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. And we can only do that if we are healthy, mind, body, and spirit." And just to have a leveling off at the beginning to explain that health is a human right, and we have something called the right to health. And the right to health is determined by factors like water, sanitation, food, nutrition, housing, healthy occupational and environmental conditions, education, information, and so on, and the access to healthcare, and the AAAQ here, which is talking about availability, especially of healthcare, accessibility, acceptability, that is in a way that is acceptable according to the local circumstances, and also the quality of healthcare must be good. And so the human rights relating to health for the highest standard of health involves equal access to adequate healthcare and health-related services, equitable distribution of food, which is involving the right to food, right to safe drinking water and sanitation, the right to an adequate standard of living and adequate housing. So health is a human right. No one should get sick and die just because they are poor or because they cannot access the health services that they need. So we're going to now look at climate change through the lens of holistic health. So whatever I'm going to share with you now from here on, think about how it impacts these 6 factors of health. We are the hottest we've been in at least 100,000 years. And this is where we are around here now. You can see from the start of the Industrial Revolution, that's roughly about 150, 200 years ago, after the discovery of oil, that the global temperature has been increasing. And 2022, the average over land and sea was 1.15 degrees Celsius above this baseline compared to 1880, right? That's also, frightening because last year was a La Nina year, which means La Nina has a cooling effect. And in spite of that, we were still so high. Okay? The hottest we've been so far is 1.2. That was in 2016. So last year was the 5th hottest year on record. And this is what the world looks like in terms of light pink, warmer than average, dark pink, much warmer than average, and recorded as the warmest, which is impacting all areas of life. And the IPCC, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a group of scientists that have been issuing what we call assessment reports. This is the 6th assessment report. They started in 1987. They gave a code red warning, meaning that, it's an alarm bell. And this will probably be the last IPCC report before we hit 1.5 degrees sometime in the next decade. And the impacts of climate change are very visible and are increasing. You know this in your own countries, and especially Asia. Asia is especially vulnerable to floods, typhoons, droughts, and so on. So where are we headed? In Paris, in 2015, they set the goal of trying to keep to 1.5 and not exceeding 2. So, but we are not there. We are somewhere, we are here. So the pledges taken in Paris by over 190 countries will still take us to 2.8 degrees by the end of the century. But current policies, that means the policies are falling short even of the pledges, will take us to 3.2 degrees by 2100. And if we don't do anything and everyone gives up and says, I don't care what happens, then we can easily go up to 4.8. And the worst case scenario is actually around 5.2 degrees Celsius, which is unimaginable. We don't even know whether we'll survive past 2 degrees. And so in 2018, the IPCC came out with a special report just to compare what will happen to the world at 1.5 degrees and 2. And as you can see, I'm not going to go into detail. This is just to give you an idea that the impacts at 2 degrees are vastly, vastly worse than at 1.5. 1.5 is bad, and at 2 degrees, it's worse. Okay. And we'll be losing a lot of plant species and animal species, also fishery. This is your food. This is your medicine. Yeah, 25% of Western medicine comes from rainforest. Okay, and we lose plants. We lose, so much. Even our air conditioning system for the world. Yeah, because forests provide a cooling effect on the earth. And then in 2019, there was a new report using better technology that found that a lot of countries, a lot of people in Asia will be exposed to higher sea level rise than earlier estimated, about 3 or 4 times more. And these 6 countries in Asia, China, Bangladesh, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand, will be housing 50% to 80% of the people that will be exposed to annual floods or permanent flooding. Okay. And this is what the world would look like at 1.5 degrees and 3 degrees. This is how hot it will be. And this one, the green, is for extra. In our case, will be rain, meaning it will lead to floods and so on. And where it's brown here will be dry, indicative of shortage of rain and even drought. And the IPCC, the second working group, its report came out in early last year, and they said that climate change is a threat to human well-being and planetary health. And any further delay in concerted anticipatory global action on adaptation and mitigation will miss a brief and rapidly closing window. This is relating to what I showed you earlier about, we want to be at not more than 1.5 degrees by end of century, but we are far from there. And we have only a few more years left, maybe 5-6 years before we will lose the opportunity together of, keeping a global warming within 1.5 degrees. So the working group 2 said that our world is getting hotter, sicker, hungrier, more miserable, and more dangerous to live in. That more than about half the world lives in areas highly vulnerable to climate change. They expect the population exposed to sea level rise within coastal areas to increase to about 1 billion people by 2050. And the most impacted resources will be water, food, and energy. And the health impacts, we'll see an increase in diseases, food, water, vector-borne diseases, like vector-borne, like example carried by mosquitoes, like dengue and malaria. Anxiety, depression, acute stress, this is impacting our mental health. Air pollution, malnutrition, disease susceptibility in low and middle poorer countries. Yeah. And then we'll see a lot of flood damage. I'm just putting the figures here, you can read them. Agricultural droughts. And of course, this will impact agricultural yields. That means there will be less food. Chronic water scarcity. And, we will lose 10 to 30% of global crop and livestock areas by 2050 and 2100 under a high emission scenario. And we'll also lose food from the ocean because of ocean acidification, ocean warming, loss of habitat, and so on. Yeah. And, this is over and above the fact that half the world is hungry. This figures from the UN, the FAO, for 2021, where, half the world can't afford a healthy diet. So who is at risk from climate change? Everyone, everywhere, especially the poor, women, children, and the elderly, outdoor workers, those with chronic medical conditions, children, and those living in megacities, small island developing states, coastal, mountainous, and polar regions. So countries like the Philippines are highly vulnerable. Yeah. Countries with weak health systems. And the Lancet is the leading healthcare journal, and it wrote in its 2022 report, countries and companies continue to make choices that threaten the health and survival of people in every part of the world. An immediate health-centered response can still secure a future in which world populations can not only survive, but thrive. So they also gave a code red in 2021, a code red for health, meaning that we are in the danger zone. So how will health be impacted? Okay, increasing CO2 levels will lead to rising temperatures, will lead to more extreme weather and rising sea levels. This will have all these impacts here. Now we'll go one by one. Extreme heat can kill you. You can die of heat stroke, heart failure. Of course, when we have typhoons and hurricanes and all these sort of events, then people will get injured and they will die, and then they'll suffer from trauma after that. Air pollution. Why is air pollution here? Because burning fossil fuel not only produces greenhouse gases, but also produces dangerous air pollutants that are killing almost 9 million people a year through asthma, heart disease. Then you'll find diseases like dengue, malaria, and all those carried by insects like mosquitoes, increasing allergens, people with asthma, respiratory allergies. We'll have water-borne diseases increasing like cholera. We'll have shortage of food and diarrhea. And of course, when farms fail, for instance, because it's too dry or there's no water, and so on, or they're covered by flood waters, then people will be forced to migrate, and then people will fight for food and water and shelter. And this will have tremendous mental health impacts. This is a report from the Monash University, which found that more than 5 million extra deaths a year can be attributed to abnormal hot and cold temperatures, and more than half of these occurred in Asia. Okay. And heat waves can kill you silently. You'll be dehydrated. It can lead to kidney disease and other organ breakdown, mental health problems, respiratory diseases, heat cramps, and stroke. And drought is also dangerous to your health. I've mentioned the health-related illnesses, but then, when there's shortage of water, you have toxic algae blooms, you have harmful water pollutants, increasing in concentration. Diseases spread more easily when it's very dry. There'll be mental health impacts, anxiety, depression, and so on, especially if people lose their farms, they're not able to go out to forage in the forest and so on. And then, of course, those with asthma and respiratory problems will face difficulties. And I've mentioned before that we will see increases in diseases like dengue and malaria. So this is a kind of a snapshot of the key points from the Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change 2022. They found that children under 1 year old and adults over 65 were very vulnerable, especially to heat. They counted in terms of days of heat waves. Yeah. So there's an increase for children under 1 is 600 million more days. And for adults over 65, it's 3 billion more days. Okay. And basically it led to loss of income, because overall we lost 470 billion potential labor hours. Malaria transmission rose by 32% in the Americas and 15% in Africa. And dengue rose by 12%. Dengue transmission rose by 12% globally, right? And this is the impact of air conditioning, which emitted about 900 million tons of CO2 emissions. And I said earlier, air pollution comes from burning fossil fuels as well. Your cars, your machines, our factories, and air pollution kills people from the womb until old age. And this is a Harvard and other study found that almost 9 million people die from fossil fuel pollution in a year. Talking about mental stress, mental anxiety, you have all these posters, especially from young people like yourselves, yeah, climate anxiety and eco anxiety. And even the IPCC said that, you know, climate change is a growing threat to mental health. There's emotional distress, anxiety, depression, grief, and even suicidal behavior. Like they feel they don't have a future and life is so dangerous, and that climate action must support mental health support. Also that, you know, you don't see the mental health impacts as you see physical. Physical impacts are easier to treat because you can see them, injury and so on. But mental health impacts not easily visible. So a baby born today will be exposed to climate change for her whole life. And, you know, how we respond today determines what kind of life, future she will have. And we come now to what the Pope says, what the Church says. This is Laudato Si, of course, you know, that came out in 2015 about a true ecological approach being a social approach. And it must integrate questions of justice. And the justice we're talking about tonight in particular relates to the right to health. Okay? And, you know, we talk about human health, but we can't have human health without having planetary health because we depend on the earth. The earth can live without us, but we can't live without the earth. And this is the Living Planet Report 2022 by the WWF that found that from 1970 to 2018, we lost 69% of populations of birds, mammals, reptiles, fish, and amphibians. Okay, this is terrible, huh? Really terrible. And this is just caused by us. So damaging the planet damages human health. These are very, very low figures actually, but you know, these are minimal figures. Climate change is expected to cause an extra 250,000 deaths a year. Actually, people estimate it's more like 400,000. We are losing biodiversity. There's hunger and malnutrition. And 40% of the world's population, you know, lives in areas that are under severe water stress, meaning water shortage. And we are losing 1 to 2 million hectares of agricultural land per year. So this is the person we're thinking of, the human being. We talk about public health, but this depends on global health and this depends on planetary health. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, has come up with this concept of one health. Healthy people, healthy environment, and healthy animals. Especially when COVID happened, they realized that, you know, this impacts us, and also how we treat animals and how we rear livestock impacts their health and our health. And what happens in the environment impacts all of us. Okay, and this is also tied to the Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is to end hunger. We're supposed to aim for zero hunger, and that's not going to be possible anymore. Because, you know, like I said, half the world is still hungry. So what can we do? We have to ensure community health resilience. For those who know about my other talks, I talk about community resilience a lot. This is only the health aspect, only one factor in the whole tree of resilience. So when we talk about health resilience for communities, we need to think about food security, water security, health and strength, which covers physical health, mental and emotional health, spiritual health, access to treatment. What treatments do they have? Indigenous treatment, treatment at a hospital, access to healthcare services and facilities. Are there health resource people in the community? And is there health education, social support and networks to help when something happens, like a calamity happens? How are women and girls treated in the community? How are minorities treated, like the LGBTQI people, the aged, the sick, the physically disabled? How are youth and children treated? What is the community's awareness of climate change? Do they have any disaster risk reduction training? And are they able to assert their rights? Example, their right to health, their right to food, their right to water, their right to a safe environment, their right to life. So I just want to end with this, telling you there is a Laudato Si Asia, which we have formed. And I hope you will join us. You can contact Father Jojo or myself, okay? and that we are working on advancing ecological spirituality, resilience, and ecological justice across Asia through a culture of care that involves, yes, health in mind, body, and spirit. Okay? And you are the climate advocates for your generation and future generations. So speak, act, and lead. And you are the ones that you've been waiting for. So we are here to help you and support you. And I hope that this has been an informative and useful talk for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Claire. The presentation was so informative and we gained so much of new knowledge. So participants, if you have any questions from this part, like what Ms. Claire take us through, it's time for you to raise them. Do you all have any questions? Like in your presentation, there was adaptability and vulnerability. Like how exact facts, like how exactly in specific way, like how we can be adapt to this climate changes.
Sorry, were you asking me that question?
What I raised was like in your presentation, I saw the adaptability and vulnerability. Like,
You're breaking up, Rosa.
Exactly, we can adapt to this climate change
Yeah, I would say look at the factors of resilience that I shared in towards the end, the factors of community resilience. I hope you can hear me. And strengthen all those factors. Do what in my work across Asia, I've gone to, well, many countries to talk about resilience. And what we do is we get them to do an assessment of where they are in terms of all the factors that I shared, plus other factors also about their settlement design, about their adaptive capacity, about their social capital, and the factors that I shared with you. And then see where they are and where their needs are. Because we need to go beyond adaptation. Adaptation is you adjusting to something that comes at you, and it's more like a reaction. Resilience is the ability to withstand a shock, whatever that shock will be, whether it's a flood, whether it's an emotional shock, to be able to withstand it. And if you are impacted by it, then to be able to recover fast, and then to be able to still thrive. So what we're looking for is how do we help young people face a climate challenge future with competence, that means with the skills that you need, with confidence, with courage, and with hope. And so learning resilient skills is, to me, it's fundamental, it's not negotiable. Right now, I don't know how many groups are doing that, how many people are actually investing in helping young people build their resilience, because we are all the time firefighting, yeah? But that's not enough. And so I think learning resilient skills is fundamental. So I hope that answers a very long answer to your question, but that's really the
Very
bottom
clear.
line, Rosa.
Am I clear enough now, or can I move forward? Can someone please confirm? Am I clear enough, my voice?
Now you're okay.
Miss Claire, am I clear enough?
You break up.
Okay.
Your connection is unstable, Rosa.
Okay.
So
We
sometimes we can
almost
hear you and
finished
sometimes we
our
can't.
first part of our program. So we are about to move for the second part. Sorry about it. Okay. Without taking further more time, let me hand it over for our second speaker. She's Lasimbang. She's the founder and the executive director of Partners of Community Organization in Sabah. So, Madam, you can take over and take us through this Indigenous people and their importance of their role in mainstreaming a climate solution. Over to you.
Hi. Am I clear? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will also put off my video just because it's nighttime here, so sometimes the bandwidth is also weak, so I'll just put it off. But I would like Berta, or because I sent my slide earlier. Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, kopi siang, good evening to everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Claire, for that sharing just now. I think that was really very clear. But I feel with that, I think it's very important to realize that everyone has the responsibility towards finding climate solution, and we were talking about the resilience just now, building resilience, and I think this is very important. But tonight I was tasked to look at how indigenous people solution can be a mainstream into the climate solution. So I hope I will be able to give some sharing and some ideas and what are the things we can do. Next, please. Okay. Before I go into what are the uh, climate solution that indigenous peoples can contribute. Um, Claire and me come from Malaysia, and talking about indigenous peoples in Malaysia, we are actually about 4.4 million. Most of the indigenous people are actually found in the the two regions of Malaysia, that is in Sabah and Sarawak. But there are also indigenous peoples in Peninsular Malaysia, about 18 ethnic subgroup, and in Sarawak about 25 and 39 ethnic group. So we're a very diverse community. Uh, all the all of us have different languages. We have unique culture practices. For me, I'm a Kadazan Dusun. I belong to that indigenous group, and I come from this community that is practicing a farming community. So my grandparents, my ancestors were actually people who were farmers and around the area of Pinampang, and my parents were My grandparents were midwife, herbalist, and also bobohizan or the shaman. We are baptized and practicing Christian Catholics, but we are also looking at how to understand and valuing our indigenous spirituality in our everyday life. So, looking at how indigenous people look at our faith as Christians, and from that perspective, at the same time, understanding that we have so much to contribute towards our faith. Next, please. Okay. When we in the community, we always ask them here in Sabah, because I work with community in Sabah. We ask them, do you know what is climate change? And is there any environmental issues that you all face? And normally, they will say, yeah, they are very aware of climate change. They can now feel the extreme weather, which also disrupt seasons of planting. Either they have too much rain, and then in the end we have flash flood, and also mud flow, which do not happen. And then, or otherwise, if there's not too much rain, then we have no rain at all, and we have drought and fire. And definitely we feel it's very hot. The temperature has risen, so everybody is very much aware of that. And they also talk about environmental pollution. They say that nowadays there's just so much plastics, there's just so much chemicals, and they also feel that they suffer from haze, a lot of burning. So there's also pollution of the air. And so they feel that it has a lot of impact on them. And as Clay mentioned, they are the most vulnerable people in the community, like children, women, and these are people who live on the island, on the seashore, on the mountain, and the interior parts of Sabah. They say it affects the food, the clean water, it affects their health, and when there is a flood or fire, it affects the safety. And I think overall it affects also the survival of the community. So this have been what the feedback of communities uh, been saying to us, and they're also very concerned about climate change that is happening now. So next slide, please. So in order to think about mainstreaming climate solution from indigenous people perspective, I think it's very important to understand the indigenous people's worldview. Otherwise, we will not be able to appreciate what is our contribution. So this worldview is accumulated. So one of the worldview and actually our core value is that everything is interrelated. We as humans, as well as the environment, whether uh, it's a rock, whether it's a tree, whether it's the river, whether it's the mountain, the sea, and the human. Humans are considered, and the environment are together as one. So that's the core value that we hold, and that is very important. So this worldview is accumulated through generations by indigenous communities through observations, practices, reflection. And this wisdom is very specific to a local a territory, and this has guided indigenous community to live harmoniously with nature and ensure their survival over time, over these years from the beginning of time. But as you know, with climate change, I think this is changing. Uh, so with this worldview and this system, especially as we understand, there is both the spiritual as well the physical, is both based on the physical and the spiritual based system. So in order for us to understand the indigenous worldview more clearly, it's best to look at it as what is the principle of it, what's the concept and what is the practice. So when we talk about the principles or the value, is mainly talking about, it's very important in life, the principle of harmony and balance, respect, and it's God given, it's sustainable. So that's the principle of what we hold. And in terms of the concept, we as indigenous community has this concept that we must respect and care for all things, no matter what. We care for each other as a community, and we care for the others outside. Um, Maybe what is seen and unseen. So we caring and respect is very important concept to us. So there's always that give and take, and we have a lot of values and concept that reflect what we call reciprocity. So we have this concept called Gompi Guna. That's in Kadazan. It's translated protect and use. So Gompi means protect, Guna is use. So this has always been the concept of how we look at the earth and how we live as indigenous community. And we have a lot of practices. That is what is being done in the community is like activity like Tagal or Tavol, or looking at traditional calendar, where we look at the phases of moon for that guide us in our farming, hunting, our festival, and even when people die or people get married, cycle of the moon plays a very important role. So this worldview has been something that we have hold so much, and it had helped us survive and ensure that there is balance between nature and the human all these years. But because of new values, new religion that come into the community, and new system of economy like capitalism, uh, we have been all these views and worldview has been considered as outdated, or we are even called ways of the dark, or we have been called pagan, and we have to convert into this new system. And this is considered to be what people has been a belief system that is um, in Malay here we call kolot, or it need to be left and to embrace on a new belief system. But it looked like with climate change and the problem that we are facing now, I think it's very important to go back and look at this fundamental values, this core value that indigenous people has to contribute. So I think understanding this core value will help us understand the work and the practices that we have as indigenous community. Then only we can contribute and mainstream our practices. Next, please. So, this is an example of a community in Sabah, Kampung Alutok village in Ulutomani. So if you can see this indigenous community of this village, this is an example where they are very dependent on their surrounding, their environment for food, water, survival, culture, and their identity. And they really look after this territory, this world that they have. So they see the forest as a very important source of medicine for their hunting. It's also a place for their say is where they have this what they call uh, important places or sacred places that they go to and connect to their creator. Uh, and then there is also part where there is this agriculture, and where there is long-term work and short-term agriculture, and their village as well, their settlement. And then normally there's a river flowing, um, and there's water and fish all the time. So in a community, they must not lose this. And a lot of times, because of development like opening of big plantation, mining, or dams or highways, and indigenous communities are forced to give up this environment and this territory that they have looked after for generations. So I think that's very important to understand. And so be, big development has caused us to lose all this. Next, please. Right. Okay, so in terms of indigenous peoples' approaches to addressing climate change, I think it's very important to go back to that value, the core value of what we have, our connection to the environment. It needs to be revitalized. It needs to be revived among communities, even among indigenous communities. Due to modern education, modern lifestyle, due to consumerism, we also have lost a lot of this value. So for us, we need to revive this relationship. So the values of harmony, balance, respect, that everything is God given, and the concept of protecting and using, such as the practice of uh, tagal or tawol. And so here in Sabah, we have tried to strengthen and introduce the tagal system to ensure that our river is looked after, the mangrove and the sea and the forest are looked after. So this is very local but very important. Yeah, so climate change has been is a result of human disconnection to the environment. So activities and businesses do not take account the impact of environment. So we have kind of uh, cut our ties with the environment. So we think that it is not important. We can master, we can control the environment. But actually, we must remember that we are part of the environment. Yeah. Okay, next. Okay. So, what can be an example? How can we mainstream an indigenous practice to climate solutions? I could only think of one example. I could think of one example. We using the concept of Gompi Guna. So this is mainly actually now we use it to maintain biodiversity and ensure that this food security. So if you look at the concept of Gompiguno, it has that tagal. Tagal is the concept of looking after our river, and it also involves community hunting, um, traditional herbs, looking after ensuring that our traditional herb garden, and we have the community use zone, as well as looking after the watershed. So this concept on resource management, but this concept needs to be shared because it's using the concept of use and protect. And this ensures that the natural resources are utilized in a sustainable manner, ensure food security, and it has a very low carbon footprint because we are responsible for what we have around us. So that you can imagine